we're reconvening from closed session and we have some items to report out. So on closed session item PE 2122-3 voted to approve 4-0 with one absent. Those present were trustee Mudd, trustee Lee, trustee Wong, trustee Hill, and absent was trustee Sacramento. And then on closed session item PE 2122-4. This was also approved 4-0 with one absentee. Present were trustee Mudd, trustee Wong, trustee Lee, trustee Kendall, and absent is trustee Sacramento. Okay, so now we will have our roll call. Trustee Mudd, here. Trustee Sacramento, trustee Reed, here. Trustee Wong, here. Trustee Kendall, here. Does anyone have a motion to approve? Want to make a motion to approve our agenda? A motion to approve our agenda for tonight. Great. Second. Great. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay. Now the minutes. Does anyone want to amend the minutes, or shall or make a motion to approve the minutes from November 16th? I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from November 16th. Okay. Second. Second. Great. All in favor? Aye. Aye. And now we will move on to the informational item, our study session. And thank you, gentlemen, for coming here.
Thank you. We'll open that file and I'll take the clicker.
Does anyone want to amend the minutes, or shall I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from November 16th? I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from November 16th. Second.
The YouTube channel's on one of the.
Great. All in favor? Aye.
Close it out.
Yep, close it out. There you go.
Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to view this with us today. We're here to talk about approvals on changes in tranche 1 project budgets and discussion of placeholders for future tranches. We have some drivers for today's discussion being transitional kindergarten workforce housing budget estimates and some emerging needs. And I'd like to point out, all of you have a large copy of this in front of you, and it's a slightly different format that you've seen in the past. If you look in the top right-hand corner, there is gray square showing that no substantial change. And in green, these are new projects or substantial changes that we want to make sure that you are made aware of. So if you look at line 5, on the left-hand side, there are numbers that show the line number to refer to. And I would ask if you have any questions that you point out a line number rather than try to talk about a project by name so that I can get to the right project. So line 5 shows that we have new interest generated of $389,000. We also got a federal grant reimbursement for E-rate of $48,000. And we're showing in today's study session a budget line item of $4 million for sale of a district asset, whether it's the district office or any other properties. So you'll see in the gray, line 8, where no changes, 9, no changes to a 14, 15. Staff's recommending adding a new budget line item of $450,000. We were incorporating all of our district technology needs by project, but we're finding that there's potential in the future, as this is a 7-year project, that there could be unforeseen technology issues outside of project areas. So we're recommending putting $50,000 in tranche 1 and then $200,000 in the 2 following subsequent tranches. And you'll see in lines 16, 17, and 18, that's why there's that $200,000 difference in the 1/3 of each of the district program-wide costs. Those program-wide costs do not include the program contingency line 8. That is a separate budget item that is board control. So moving forward, you'll see 19 shows that $50,000 add, and line 25 shows the budget to an actual encumbered add of a couple $1,000. So this is what staff is looking for recommendation to implement. In the past, the board has only given direction to do tranche 1 projects. So we want to show that line 26, we're recommending reducing the budget because now that we have design development documents and we have a better cost estimate, we feel that we are over budgeted for that project. Line 27, you'll see that we have a current budget of $297,960. This is to build a play structure at Lincoln, but that play structure is in tranche 3. We did discover that we had some wear on the surfacing at Lincoln, and we had a choice between spending $48,000 to retop the entire surface on an obsolete clay structure near the end of its life, or to patch it for $7,500, and the district made the choice to patch with the hope of expediting the replacement of that structure. So we're showing bringing up that project from tranche 3, as well as adding $507,000, which was again in another project, tranche 3, which we'll talk about later. That's moving up the site work that we would do in conjunction with that, as well as adding additional planting as well. Line 28 is district-wide rekeying. We've talked about this. It is coming to the board at our next board meeting. Should it become a project here tonight, which is talking about changing every lock in the district and upgrading some of the hardware as required to change those locks and creating new keys. Line 29, in response to an accident that happened on Camino Real, we're looking at putting in bollards and/or irrigate and/or landscape and irrigation along the street side so that we can beef up that separation between the street and the play structure, playground. Line 30, we are looking at how to add TK at all spaces next year if possible, or in the subsequent year. And we have no open space at McKinley. So in order for us to do that, we would need to take one of the 2 portables currently leased to our daycare provider Champions. But the interior surfaces and potentially the restroom may need some new surfaces and new improvements. So this is asking for that money to do those interior finishes, whether it's paint, carpet, new ceiling tiles. We have a working fire alarm, we have an IDF, so we know we have the technology. This is that budget line item. Line 31, at our last board meeting, the board gave direction for us to issue an RFP for a workforce housing feasibility study. Later on tonight, we'll be bringing an initial phase to the board. This is a $140,000 budget only for that project. We got that number based on what other districts are seeing and doing for the work that they've done. Line 32. So the state has mandated that we add TK. In order for us to add TK at some of our sites or all of our sites, we're recommending doing the CEQA study, which would be a memo from our attorneys in response to the state that would give us a category exemption to all sites, allowing us to add 20% at our campus. Line 33 is a BIS to convert a classroom to a shop design. And I'd like to say 33 and 34. We're recommending that we move the district office to building 1. In order to move building 1, we need to start that design process in those spaces. And one of the phases is line 33 is find a place for the shop at the school site, but it's also to begin the modernization design of the district office into building 1. So moving forward, tranche 2, we are just recommending moving the sales at tranche from spring 2023 to fall 2023. We're required to have a reasonable expectation of spending 85% of a bond within the first 3 years of sale. You have 5 years to use all the funds without any penalties, but the only penalty that I've never seen happen is if the interest earned is higher than the yield on the bond. We don't anticipate that happening, but we feel that moving it forward gives us ample time to spend that money in that way. So tranche 2, I just want to be very clear. These are placeholders. We are not designing this here tonight. We are looking at a way to achieve projects that were on the funded list by the board at its September board meeting, and how we can achieve those with some emerging needs. So line 37, when we reviewed the square footage of the Franklin admin and library, we realized we were basing our initial budget on too high of a square footage count. of the building, so we're recommending reducing it by $1,700,000. Line 38, again, in response to the state's request for transitional kindergarten. We have a budget item here of $351,000, which will allow us to build a fenced-in play area for a TK at Franklin. It's a little more than that. Okay, it's the demand, unfortunately. Yes. Line 39. And just so everyone understands that TK, we can use existing classrooms to TK, but if we build new, we need to build to the standard of 1,400 square foot. But if we're going to use an existing space, we can use whatever space that we have available. Line 40
Was there a
is,
requirement for the playground?
pardon me?
Was there a requirement for the playground?
The playground is not a requirement, but we are going to now have children that would be too young to safely play on the play structures we have. So it is a district request that we do that. We have TKs in this budget at every site, but I don't already have them. So line 39, the only playground at the end of this program that would still have sandbar is Franklin. We're recommending putting that turf in there and drain in there as well. It's a play structure that's less than 5 years old and was put in by PCA funds. Line 40, the BIS is to convert that classroom. This is the construction phase, $472,000. So line 41, we were carrying a budget item of $1,092,000 to put in generators for the server room and kitchens at BIS. We are recommending just that become part of line 42, that budget become freed up. So originally line 42 was to tear down and build a whole new building. The budget was $18 million. We feel that we can modernize that building and change the scope with the savings of $1,580,000. 11 million. Did I say million?
Yeah.
11,548,000. 11,548,000.
Where's the rest of the money, Mr.
I'm sorry about that. So this would create a new district electric kitchen, which will allow us to potentially take advantage of state electric kitchen funds. It allows us to create a server room with a generator so that we can have a proper server room with a backup generator. And I want to point out that the $316,000 that's in the schematic design is not shown in this $7 million. Move forward to tranche 1. 43, we got a report from our roofer. We asked for a report. Buildings 1 through 8, the admin, the attached walkways, and the toilet buildings all have a tar and gravel roof. We've had a lot of repair on those while we were carrying off all the electrical data gas that was running along the top of that. And at that point, those tar will be 15 years old. They've had a lot of foot traffic on them. They're also a destination for vandals on skateboards and bicycles. So they're near the end of their life. We're recommending doing those roofing pieces at the same time. Yeah, they would ride their bikes up and down. That there's a cost savings if you can do a roofing at the same time you're doing building 1. So you have a contractor on site. So line 44 was the McKinley daycare portable. We were carrying a $3 million budget to replace those with 2 960 square foot classrooms. We're recommending changing that scope and eliminating that budget. We did have a budget of $390,000 in to do new surfaces in the kitchen. Line 45, we're recommending adding to that budget and making it into a library in those 2 spaces. And at line 46, which is convert the library to 2 TK classrooms and to redo the bathrooms. So having $4,008,000 and $979 in 45 and 46 is to in 2023. It's a budget hole to look at where we could create TKs. We're not designing it today, but we do know that if we did work in that library, we would have to do the adjacent bathrooms because they're no longer, they're doing overcode. No big changes on tranche 3 other than the adding of the 200,000. So tranche 3, line 55, that is the new frontage building at Lincoln. It was to replace their admin, their their kindergarten building, their library, and potentially replace all the portable classrooms on site with new classroom space. We're showing taking 447,000 out of that site work because we're going to be doing the play structure and playground at the same time and moving that forward into tranche 2 so that we can have a project substantial this summer. We also show line 56, moving 60,000.
Just to clarify, you moved that.
Tranche one.
Did I say tranche 2? I apologize. Tranche 1, this summer, yes, tranche 1. Thank you very much. Line 56, it is moving $60,000 out of the irrigation project forward so that we can add additional trees for shade at the Lincoln Playground as well. Line 57. So line 57 is a placeholder in 2026 that talks about setting funds aside. Those funds are made up of the Measure M transfer that the board approved in September, of 2.8 million. The sale of the district asset of 4 million, which I want to be clear, if it was the district office, that is a very conservative number. That number could be much higher. Savings on the BIS building of the 11 million too. Savings on the BIS generator of $1 million. And below on line 63, it's the savings of the server room, which again became part of the other building. So this 19,745 is a placeholder of funds that would either be used to help offset costs for a developer or whatever project we may need for workforce housing. And or it's the seed fund we need for a new school and or new classrooms based on enrollment and what the projections might be. Line 58. So at Washington, we are originally showing $936,000 towards modernizing the former library. We're recommending moving that scope, that monies into other projects at Washington. So at Washington, we originally had $4 million in to remove the daycare portables and to build a new library. So line 60, we're recommending leaving the daycare portables currently and putting in ATK. So instead of adding 2 960 square foot spaces, adding a 1,400 square foot space. At Washington, we're showing adding escalation on line 61 for the play structure. And at Roosevelt, we're showing line 62, a $571,000 placeholder for whether we needed to convert building 14 or a library or someplace that has small rooms converted into a larger space to make it TK. And then lastly, line 63 was in fact moved into the other project for BIS 1. So we just want to point out that on line 62, these changes you're seeing today with all the scope changes and holding the 19 million has only added 7.98 to the overall projects. If you look at line 67, we currently have budgeted $115,000, making it the changes to 124,000 with our resources are 150,000, our revised budget is 124 with a deficit of $8.7 million.
But we have a few more zeros there.
Yes, yes.
124 million.
Am I saying thousands? I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I apologize.
Okay, just want to make sure.
I
everybody's
appreciate
clear.
try to soften it. I'm a little nervous. These are big numbers. So when the board took action in September, I want to remind the board that at that time, there was a $5.3 million deficit in Measure O. So and by doing this, all the work that we're showing and by retaining all of those funds that were shown in the seed fund, we're now showing an $8 million deficit, but it is not touching in any way the 3.395 line 66, which is the program contingency. So the emerging.
Could I have you pause for a second and step back? Could you go all the way back to slide 1, please? The driver, slide 2, we'll call it slide 2. Thank you. So could you just briefly touch on when you say driving the discussion and all the information you just presented? So basically, we're asking the board to consider retranching because of these 4 things driving this discussion. So that the public understands and the board understands, could you explain what those 4 things are?
Sure, so the state has required us to add a grade level for the first time since adding kindergarten at a school district. And it's a significant impact financially, not just on spacing, but on staffing as well. But as far as the bond is concerned, it's on making space. And there are some matching funds available from the state if you're building new and you build to the current 1375 square foot with a bathroom included. But we're finding that we're able to achieve TK at most spaces by using existing spaces, but we need to make the ancillary play structures and furniture and the pieces that we need.
So Tim has met with all of the principals, identifying potential spaces for the initial rollout to accommodate TK. But then in the future years, if and as TK expands, those are the projects that are really impacting the program.
The state expects us to fully implement TK for all 4-year-olds and actually 2 months of 3-year-olds in the next 4 years. Right, so there is a phased rollout from the state. We're adding 2 months of eligibility per year starting next year. And we will need to have TK available.
Do you anticipate that because TK is a requirement by the state that just because I think a lot of school districts actually have empty rooms in many places, they're not going to build something new, that it would make sense that they would actually fund these modernizations of existing rooms, right? Not just the build new.
Correct. Yes.
So you're anticipating they will give us money for that, right?
The matching funds are extremely limited and they're very small. So they're giving us some money depending on what work we do, but it will in no way come close to the amount of money that would be expended even to refurbish a spot for TK. But you're absolutely right, Trustee Wong. So we are losing 500,000 students in the state of California right now. Started with COVID. We have about 6.5 million school-age children, and we're losing 500,000 of those. We have in the last 2 years and in the next 3 years. And so we are expanding a grade level for the first time, which is anticipated to get back between 200,000 and 300,000 of those students. But that also will then help fill some of those spaces. So they're sort of complementary. There is definitely a relationship there.
And while we will get in place for any state fund that's available, they are more focused on lower economic services first. We would get in line wherever we could, but we don't anticipate. We looked at taking 3 classrooms and we're modernizing them into making 2 of the 1440s, and it just didn't cost out. So when you're building new, because you have impacted sites like McKinley and and Washington, that there's the potential for building at the right at that dimension.
So one second, I want to make sure you cover all 4 of those.
Yes.
And then certainly we can go back and discuss them. But the other driving factors for your reordering are, could you explain the other 3 up there, please?
Sure. So the workforce housing was a driver from the board that we look at having that workforce housing study initiated, which we're bringing to the board later today. And we don't know until we actually complete phase 1 and maybe potentially a phase 2 of that study, whether or not the district would need to have money set aside to help make it a interesting project to developers. We don't know what that number is. If it's 9 million, if it's 10 million, if it's 19 million.
Yeah, the consultant may tell us, you don't have enough money to make it a worthwhile project. They might tell us, no, actually, if you have $10 million that you could have set aside, you're going to get the attention of some developers. You're going to be able to do something. So we'll know more when we know more.
And by moving the district office at Building 1 and by potentially selling the district office, we felt it prudent to just take those funds and set them aside until we knew more information as to what could happen with workforce housing. So that's one of the big drivers. The budget estimate adjustments are, we bring this to you periodically with additional expenses needed to close projects out. And the emerging needs is we also, we're working very closely with the city and with our demographer to look at what potentially may happen with all of the new development here, whether or not we would need additional classrooms and or an initial school. So that's why that line item that set the 19 million aside said or exceeding funds for a new school and or new class.
Another item in the emerging needs is, what we talked about with the technology. Identifying that as a specific project to be prepared.
And potentially, with our declining enrollment, moving the district office and making better use of space. So could you go a little bit more detail when we talk about new development, working with the demographer, which you gentlemen and Amanda are doing? And I might be involved as well. What are the options to accommodate that development, the two options that we have to figure out which way to recommend to the board? We are not going to be recommending a direction tonight. We're working on the study, but those emerging needs could be one of two different things. Could you explain what those would be?
I believe you're referring to whether we redistrict this, what schools people would come to, or that we add additional classrooms or build a space, like buy a space to build a new building, or that we work with the city to try and increase the funds available from the developers to build an additional space. Is that right?
Right. So it would either result in a new school site, if that's what the demographics tell us, or that we have to accommodate any new students at existing sites, but then we would have to change the boundaries of where each elementary school is fed from.
So we're engaging the city to identify where is the growth that they're seeing, because there were intentions, as you may have heard with your other half as regular old citizens, the city in redoing the general plan, there was identified growth areas potentially in the downtown where they thought there might be good synergy between commercial development and residential development. Well, what they're seeing from the development community is more interest in the north end. As you may know, there's a couple of developments over here on Ogden. There's other developments identified over off of Truesdale and El Camino Real. So they're seeing a greater interest in development at this north end. Well, what that does is that potentially, as well as the new residential neighborhood that they've identified at the north end of Rollins Road. That's a wholly new residential area. So, the question came to the superintendent saying, what are you going to do about this? Well, so we're working closely with the city, closely with the city to identify in more detail what's to expect. Nobody can have a crystal ball, but at the same time, what can we expect? How can we work more closely with the city to identify strategies and know what's working?
And that's why we did our best to try to have real data for you on that today, but it is not something we were able to manifest in time. So hence the recommendation that those monies be set aside for either one.
But those are the factors underlying all of the suggestions coming to the board about realigning the tranches, because some of these needs are happening immediately, TK. Some of them are happening in the next couple of years, TK, as well as student enrollment declining. And others are happening in 5 to 10 years, all the new development coming online from the city. And so we're trying to capture plans and recommendations for all of those. Some of them we have some more time to build on. So that's the underlying for the discussion.
Right, so for line 57, with the workforce housing or new school seed fund,
Yes.
so that's placeholder for 2026.
Yes.
I know there's always in the pipeline development that the city has in the chart. In 2026, how many units are actually really built?
The best way to describe it, Trustee Wong, is that the city has put the general plan in place that identified approximately 3,000 new housing units by 2040. So, there's no way to tell exactly where we'll be at in 2026, but they identified just under 3,000 new housing units by 2040. The state then came back and said, okay, that's a good try, but your actual regional housing needs assessment requirement is 3,200 units. So the number we're working with now is 3,200 new housing units by 2040.
And currently those permitted, meaning that developers have begun the process or under construction. And the reason that we started thinking about this is it's almost 1,000 that are either permitted or under construction when we were asked for comment.
All right.
Okay, so by 2026, maybe 1,500 units.
Yeah. Right.
Which
So
counts in the RETA, right?
right, correct. And so now the demographer is taking that and saying, okay, what is your going to be? How many are exiting? How many are coming in?
Right.
And according to Amanda, they're supposed to have that to us, hopefully at least a draft of it by end of next or end of this.
And what we're looking at is differential, because oftentimes a 30-unit building is going up where a 12-unit building was, right? So we're counting that difference, not
So that's the detailed roll up our sleeves work that we're doing with the city.
And how many students are projected per unit?
It depends on the type of unit.
Right, so the details of that, which we're working on, we're gonna give the board recommendations. So the moving parties right now are us, the city, planning and development in the city, which is sort of the subsection, and the demographer. We're trying to pull all that data together and give a solid recommendation for the next 10 years. So we aren't prepared to give a recommendation one way or the other tonight, but we are identifying it definitely as an emerging need, either a new school site or reconfiguring, building on existing properties and reconfiguring feeder boundaries, both of which are significant undertakings.
Oh, we did the number for how many students per unit from the state.
From the demographer.
There is a state yield factor, and the demographer is doing a study right now to determine whether we are following the state yield factor or whether our yield factor is somehow different, using units that have already opened and comparing them and seeing what we actually average in Burlingame.
So will the demographer also look at what our gains and losses are in our existing houses
Yes.
over the last several years?
Yes, including students who age out. Yes.
Because we have a lot of older folks that
Yes.
stay in Burlingame and they are no longer generating children. So I'm just curious how that affects.
If we
I like
just
that
look at,
phrase, they're no longer generating children.
if we just look at new, it's a little scary, but we have to remember we also have attrition. So that's why we have them.
But again, Trustee Wong, the real sort of emerging factor for us as a district and that evil planning commission that keeps approving projects is the new residential neighborhood at the north end of Rollins Road. That's a bit of a game changer because there's no housing there now, so it's all net add. And because of the distance and the radius from where those students would go, it's impacting us here at the north end. We can affront it.
So there's a few more slides to get through. That's okay, but and then I have a closing.
Can I ask just one question about the chart, just when I'm trying to understand, so
Sure.
knowing that it goes to the balance being
And then-
negative 8.7 million.
Yes.
And then looking at line 57, where we're adding in savings from this, savings from that, why would you add it into that line as opposed to decrease that deficit?
Because we've always carried a deficit on a $100 million budget because there's other items we don't know what other monies may come in available. We're gonna have additional interest, we're gonna have additional developer fees, and we're gonna try and get matching funds. We've got over $10 million already in matching funds in the state, so.
Okay, so the hope is that other money will be generated to offset that deficit.
Other monies will be generated, but I can't say how much it will be. So,
And again, we also felt some obligation, Trustee Reed, that with the board expressing some interest in workforce housing and the potential need for, or the potential need for schools, we felt obliged to show you that number.
Yeah.
As opposed to you coming back and saying, well, wait a minute, where's the savings then that happens? Where did all that money go?
Right.
Show it as a number so that you could then see, and then give some direction at some point.
this property here that we're showing for $4 million could be substantially more.
Right, of
We
course.
also wanted to be conservative.
And then from the savings though, if that's coming from other tranches, is there any concern about that 5-year time period where we have to be using that money after selling the bond?
There was
or-
not. I talked with legal about that, and they have never seen anyone ever find, because the interest is so low that the yield, that they never.
Okay.
Well, as long as you're not stockpiling.
Right,
We're not, we have I have a
You have a plan,
superintendent
you have
that's
a
telling me,
roadmap.
get
Yeah.
things done. Yes.
Get it done. Okay, I just want to check on
Wanna
those.
go through your next-
Sorry.
If I could. So I just want to point out that we have talked to our cost consulting firms who do this construction, right? And they say we expect prices to steadily fall through 2022 and leveling off. But the escalation would fall. Prices aren't going to go down, the escalation will fall. But delivery is going to just continue to be aggressive. There's going to be delays all the way through next year, and it could extend beyond that now that we have new variants. So we feel pretty strongly that tranche 1 is projects that we can afford. Projects we recommend. But I want to point out that my 33 and 34 carry tranche 2. So if we move those projects forward, it is to design those, moving the district office and moving the shop. Now, even if that project moved to a tranche 3, we wouldn't lose that design. We'd be able to move it forward, but I just want to point out that that is, we normally don't do a design in one tranche and build in another. We felt that it would help this discussion process and to move it forward with design teams as soon as possible. And that's the end.
Thank you. We already have some questions.
I had just a very quick one. I was just curious if you could tell us a little bit about what sort of modernizations need to happen in the TK room to make it compliant to be a TK.
So modernization is different than new.
Okay.
The modernization that we're showing in tranche 1 for McKinley, it is already a compliant space. However, we feel that the finishes in there are aging, so that having it be a more inviting environmental space for 3 and 4-year-olds would be, new finishes, new flooring, new fixtures. But we have to look at the bathroom. We have yet to go into the space to say, do these fixtures need replacement?
It's been operating as daycare, so taking it back as educational space, we may need to add some technology. We need to be.
We work closely with Curtis, and there's already a fire alarm, and there's already technology connections, but it's bringing it up to the standard as the rest of the
The
class.
rest of the questions, but what makes it compliant for TK?
So what makes it compliant for TK is the right size furniture. If it's a new building, you need to build 1,400 square feet with a bathroom enclosed. If you're using existing, you can use any size space you have with a bathroom nearby and or enclosed.
A bathroom in the back.
Yes, and this space does have a bathroom.
There are other ancillary requirements or restrictions, like similar to kindergarten in terms of not locating on upper floors and things like that. But those aren't issues for us.
They're not.
For the spaces.
I just have a couple other questions. Building 1 FEIS, is that the last building that has been touched, or is there anything else still at FEIS that needs to be?
The admin building has not been touched.
Okay,
The buildings 7 and 8 haven't had a lot of work done on them. There is some of the roofing that we were doing would address those spaces. But that is the last classroom space that we've been postponing because it was thought it would be torn down, but now we're considering reusing it.
and where are you thinking of relocating the shop? In one of the existing buildings? I
Yeah,
wasn't quite
we
sure.
aren't designing tonight.
Got it.
If Tim had an opinion,
Yeah.
it would be up near the art room, so we have now. But I don't have an opinion. I don't have an opinion, I'm sorry.
But it would basically be in an existing building. We're not looking
Correct,
for them to
correct.
build
No,
the
we're talking-
shop
yes.
separately somewhere.
We want to
else.
work with the site to see what they recommend.
Okay, got it. And then building 1 would then be district office
Right.
kitchen.
So,
potentially.
server.
We all have opinions. It's okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But one of the great things that our process has done is talk to sites about how can we solve a problem with the project. And they may come up with a completely different idea because they're there every day. So I'm sorry for my flip response. They may
No,
have
no.
a much better solution. than I
For
do.
sure, for sure. And then my last question is just, I know you were touching a little bit on supply chain delays and things like that, but as far as just general costs, I wasn't sure if I heard, did you say we're anticipating costs kind of stabilizing or construction? I know construction costs are still kind of
Right.
going up, but
So we're bringing to the board some change orders later on in the meeting today that the escalation on the $15 million of construction of the BIS SRT is only adding 48,000. So we're not seeing a significant amount of escalation
We're
costs.
seeing the escalation level.
okay,
Well, people keep asking me, and I have to just sternly say, no, prices are not going to come back
No.
down. There's no anticipation that they'll come back down to pre-COVID anytime soon.
No, we're seeing that the escalation is
Level.
leveling or will continue to level.
got it.
Right.
So when you build this out to 2026, are you adding in potentially escalation coming back up, or are you
We
building out?
hope we are, including all the costs essential, but we also know that we'll be coming back to the board with this more than once.
Yeah.
Because nobody knew when we built this plan together that COVID was gonna happen, right? So we have always had to be a little more nimble in response to global impacts. regional smoke, fire,
Yeah.
all the things that we had to live through during this construction process that have added costs.
Tranche 3 is just gonna be carpet.
Perfect.
Joke, total joke, I'm
Yeah,
joking.
he did not record that.
Thanks, that's all my questions.
I'm fine, thank you. Okay, I think I wanted to ask about the prioritization of the TK buildings. Starting with McKinley, how it's been chosen, which schools get a first from.
So the reason that there is a line 30, which is the modernization of a space so that it could become potentially used as TK, is because it's the only space, the only school that doesn't have space that is a classroom you can already move into. So there are classrooms available at other campuses that we can put a TK also.
So at those other schools, it might just be some rearrangement of furniture, or, outfitting, but there's no other modernization need that has to occur.
Is another way of saying that the schools that show up on here for TK modification are those that are the most impacted and would need more attention.
Yes. What do you say?
Yeah, I guess I was wondering because it's like down in Tranche 3 that Roosevelt and Washington get their TK attention, so I was just wondering what was in Tranche.
I think Roosevelt and Washington have TK, right, already?
Yes, we already have.
So I was just wondering.
So if the state is going to implement over the next 4 years, the sites that already have TK, because we have 3 sites that already have TK, we already know that we can have one classroom in each of those 3 sites because they exist already. So the ones that get the attention are the ones that either are impacted so much that we don't even know where to start, or that we know that we have a space, but it has to be modified before they can actually accommodate the classroom. And then the sites that are our largest, so currently McKinley and Lincoln, we anticipate them having to add at least one more TK at those sites. And maybe Franklin as well, because the number of we're making the assumption that we can look at the number of kindergartens and then scale it back a year and maybe have a fall off of about 10% because it won't be mandatory to go to TK for parents, it'll still be optional. So we're anticipating 1 or 2 TKs at every school in the next 4 years.
And what's the ratio out in the classroom for TK?
We are doing a TK study session in the spring, but it changes. So currently it's 24:1. Our local district guideline is 23:1. Starting next year, pending the funding from the state, it's 12:1. And then in 4 years, pending the funding from the state, it's 10:1. Is that correct? Okay, I got all that right. Yes, that's the current plan from the state.
And then my other question was, at the end of all of this, would there be any classrooms in portables?
Classrooms?
Class,
No, we do show remaining some portables that are used for daycare. It is not our intention to leave portables at this time for primary class.
okay. And so, and then at McKinley, the daycare would be fixed up because of the TK visit, right? They go in.
Well, one of the 2 spaces would have had some modernization of interior finishes, and it would sit there for the 4 years before we did the primary.
Have any of the other daycares been fixed up at all?
Other than the one we built at Hoover, there has not been an investment by the bond loan at this.
Well, I'm sorry, take that back. One minor at Washington.
At Washington.
We did have to put in upgraded fire alarm devices
And McKinley is a fire alarm, yes,
because of the preschool component that was occurring in that.
but no, not finished.
But I'm very grateful for all the thought and care that has gone into this plan. There's a lot of moving pieces that you're planning way out into the future.
And I'd like to thank the owners because they've said this is their 3rd time. Process.
Yeah, well, but-
It's a great movie.
I think so. I think yeah, Superintendent and Amanda 7th. So.
That's gonna be a soundtrack and some new writers.
Nothing sticks out to me that's concerning as far as making the changes.
Right, so tonight we are looking for approval of the changes as presented and direction to move forward with tranche 1 projects.
Is it actually? Oh, it is.
So just so the board knows, your options, of course, are to approve or deny, or you can approve with modifications, meaning that somebody is suggesting a change in the order that's being presented.
Okay, so. And we're approving this and it would put tranche 1 into stone and then we know the others moving out or place.
Yes, ma'am. And we would always come back, should there be adjustments needed even in tranche 1 as things emerge and problems occur but there'll be no problems in the front.
No problem.
None,
Ever.
even with the atmosphere for work.
Yes.
We're still good.
Okay, so I think we're probably ready to.
So I'll make a motion to approve 9.1 Measure O bond budget allocation summary. Update.
All right, thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you
We
guys
appreciate
so
all
much.
your hard work. Okay,
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate all the work.
We'll be back.
Yeah, so you're not but, change the order until we get to them. And we can start with some of the other business and then make sure that we work with that exercise once that's done.
so. So I'd like to make a motion to move item 10, the patriotic exercise, to later in the agenda. Guess we should.
I would
I'd
suggest
say
it.
after, let's see,
I would make it item 15.5.
okay.
Which means that all of our statements would be completed before we do the patriotic exercise.
That sounds great. So I'd like to move to item 15.5. I make a motion to move this item. Okay, the agenda is. Great. Okay, so now we're at item 11. Public statements relating to agenda items. And I'm going to read the description of this subject. Public statements at the discretion of the Board of Trustees, the public may address the board on non-agenda topics and or agenda items. If you choose to make a public statement, you will need to complete and submit the district's Google form for public statements. This can be found on the district website at www.burlingameschools.org. The district trustees and then the form is right there on the right side. The moderator will call on you. Please note that comments are limited to 3 minutes. The board president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation depending upon the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. If your comment is on an item that is not on the agenda, then you will be asked to speak during the public statements related to non-agenda items. If your comment is on an item that is on the agenda, then you will be called on to speak at the time of the agenda. Okay, so do we have any public statements?
Not at this time, President Kendall.
So move on to item number 12, the union statement.
Yes, thank you, President Kendall. I'm actually reading the DEA statement this evening on behalf of Hoover and Jennifer Jordan. Jennifer wasn't able to make it this evening for a personal reason. And so I will be reading it for her and the teachers of Hoover. So Hoover School Notes. Hi, I am Jennifer Jordan, reporting on behalf of our staff at Hoover Elementary. We are thankful for many reasons heading into our winter break. First, we'd like to thank our amazing negotiations team for working diligently to come to a resolution with our district regarding our salary increases. The teachers in our district have worked harder than ever these past 2 years, and we're appreciative of the work they did to increase our compensation. It is wonderful to see our students back on campus, and they're enjoying the relationships they are rebuilding now that we are back full-time in person. Masks are the new normal, and we are happy to have our routines and procedures in place. We love seeing our students working together on projects, playing games on the playground, and engaged in lessons inside our classrooms. We dearly miss our principal, Lisa Booth, but are in very good hands with Ms. Guidi on our campus. She's done a wonderful job during this transition phase, and we're so grateful to have her. Our kindergarten classes are settling into their new 3 o'clock dismissal time post Thanksgiving break. It is definitely an adjustment period for them, but the kindergarten teachers are doing a great job keeping them busy. We are focusing a lot on the social emotional learning of our students this year, as they are all dealing with the effects of living through a pandemic and being isolated at home for a time. We are currently playing kindness bingo and making a giant paper chain in our front office to celebrate the small acts of kindness that make a big difference to others. Our Hoover staff is incredibly thankful for the support of our community. We love our families and are so grateful for them. We wish everyone a happy winter break. All the best from the Hoover staff.
And now we have our principal statement.
Good evening, everyone. I feel like I can stand up straight. Thank you for this opportunity. This is my first in-person board meeting since joining Burlingame, as opposed to the first one where I waved to you all on Zoom from my office. With the settlement of the contract happily behind us, we are enjoying being a cohesive group of staff members working to make this school year a success despite all the protocols and curves that COVID continues to bring. Our focus remains on the health, safety, and academic success of our students. As principals, we are still working through the sub shortage. Whether that means subbing in ourselves or having to scramble to find coverage, that is still an issue we look forward to resolving. I know that at McKinley, we have yet to send representatives to the science adoption committee meetings and have only sent half our teachers to the now. I'm hoping tomorrow brings better results. We do have 3 of our 4 covered as of right now. I'm excited. And hoping that the increase in the daily pay will draw folks in. As the month of November came to a close, so did the first trimester. And with that came the work cards that were all mailed out district-wide from all schools on Friday, all elementary schools, Friday, December 3rd. Families have hopefully received the first report cards of the year for their children. We continue to work representing the admin team at various district committee meetings, and these will continue to ramp up in the coming months. Our monthly principal leadership team spent last Thursday meeting with our RTI teachers to discuss assessment and our assessment calendar. It was a productive meeting. We determined what assessments are most helpful and necessary to retrieve the data we need to support our students. December has also been a month of winter concerts. We salute our music teachers for working under the strangest of circumstances and having to nearly reinvent the wheel to ensure our students would enjoy instrumental music this year. Also, not to go unnoticed, but our very own Carol Prater made news in the San Francisco Chronicle with an article titled 50 Years of Hot Cross Buns. Burlingame teacher might hang it up after decades of teaching music. Way to keep us in suspense, Ms. Prater. One huge hit has been the adoption of the purchase of our emojis, the cute stuffies that we are now using in our primary classrooms and offices to help our students manage their emotions. We know that SEL is a big focus this year, and this is another wonderful tool that even the adults might happen to enjoy. Last but not least, we want to wish everyone a wonderful winter break. We hope everyone spends time away from school, their computers, and work in general, and can spend time relaxing, rejuvenating, and making some memories with friends and family.
Thank you, Principal Schwelly, and it's been great to have you here. And your energy and enthusiasm. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I look forward to being back in this film.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now we have our statement from the superintendent.
Great. I'm going to keep it short. I sent out a holiday greeting to the community with recordings of our elementary school chorus. Our middle school chorus was able to perform in multiple times live, which was very exciting. They were able to put something together that followed the health and safety protocol. The latest one, I think, was actually last Friday. It evidently was very, very well received. And so definitely want to echo not just how wonderfully our music teachers and program are doing, but how wonderful all of our teachers and staff have been doing. I get some questions still about, gosh, people seem really tired still. Yes, it's still COVID. It's a whole other dimension to our work. And we've had less staff this year, but we're doing a great job. And I just encourage everybody to get the downtime they need over the next couple of weeks. And I would also ask community, turn off, get your own downtime. If you have something that you need from a teacher or a staff member, wait until after the new year, let them unplug a little bit and let them rest and relax. And with that, I just want to say, everybody have a great holiday. I was also able to spend some time with board members at California School Boards Association, the first one in a couple of years. I don't know if that's a return to normalcy or not, but that's the first time that it's been live in a couple of years. And that was wonderful to hear what was going on in districts across the state. The big takeaway that I'll share with the community that's really relevant is that we get so caught in our own perspective in a school district that we sort of sometimes fail to remember that everybody is dealing with the same issues and how they're doing. And the thing that I brought away was how well we did with COVID and all of the emergency issues that were thrown our way. A lot of districts are still working through them. And so it made me feel really great to get that outside perspective again and realize that Burlingame is doing really well. So that's my positive message for the new year and my hopes that everybody have a restful time.
Thank you. Now we'll have the statements of our board members. So we can start with trustee Mudd.
I will also keep it brief since our last meeting. I attended the owners meeting with trustee Wong and got a little preview of what we talked about today, study session. And I also attended the CSBA conference with many of you, which was a really wonderful learning experience. I took lessons from finance to upcoming legislation, workforce housing, partnerships. It was a great time. Tomorrow we have our math adoption, and I think the teachers have settled on 2 programs that they're going to start to train and pilot. And later this week, we have a board late on.
No statement aside from wishing everybody a happy, restful, and safe period.
So the updates quickly, PTA Council actually was canceled today, which is a nice little holiday gift back to everybody, which is good. That means there's not a lot going on, which means that everything is functioning very well. BCE, a couple quick updates. Superintendent Rodriguez and I will be attending the BCE board meeting this Thursday for just the annual kind of update and conversation with BCE. They're also gearing up for readathon in January, as well as their gala and auction in April. And just a quick update, they're roughly at 1.4 million right now, but they're still trying to focus on their goal of getting to 1,000 donors by the end of the year. So anybody that hasn't donated yet, make sure to get any amount in there before January 1st. The other big thing is they're still really focused on the employee match, and just wanted to make sure people knew that that accounted for almost $500,000 of their grant, which equates to probably 4 teachers. So reminding everybody just to get that out there and make sure that you're working with your employee to make that match. And then just a big thank you to BCE. I know Superintendent Monfreda's message included the winter concerts, and a reminder that all of the music is funded through BCE. So a big thank you for that. It was nice to actually have the kids in any form performing and music and all of that again. So thank you for that. And I think that's it. I also attended the CSBA. It was great to really feel that our district is functioning very well in comparison to what's going on out there with some of the other districts. Sometimes it seems like things are so intense here and everything is so crazy, but to get out there and actually hear about what everybody else is dealing with and facing, I was really proud of what Burlingame has been able to do, and that we've been able to kind of accomplish it together. And it was refreshing and kind of gave us a fresh breath of life coming back after that.
Yeah, so I also attended the CSBA conference, and it was, we had a lot of great sessions and speakers and really inspiring keynote speakers. And one of the things that I also took away was, yes, we're functioning really, really well as a district, but I'd say as a community also, we are also functioning really well compared to some of the communities that other fellow board members in other districts are managing in terms of just some communities are extremely polarized in their views about everything. Just name it, they're polarized, and it really affects even their ability to hold meetings. So I'm just really grateful that we all function well as a district, but also as a community. That's a big factor. And I wish everybody a good winter break as well. I'm looking forward to it myself.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't have much to add. I do want to give another shout out to the performing arts program in our district. It's been pretty impressive, like watching the plays happening with the wind blowing by and those kids are just hanging on. And then the band concert last week, it started raining and they're just playing away. And I mean, it's been really amazing to see them get together and be able to do all this. I'm so proud of our district. I also wish everybody a wonderful break and I hope you just take time off to really unwind and rest. It's been a year. Okay, so now we will go to our item 15.5, our patriotic exercise. So we have two students. Hello. What's up?
I am happy and honored to bring to you today our two students, Peyton Nesbitt and Erin Lowe. They are our fifth graders, fifth grade students who are also on our student leadership. One of our students, Peyton, is in our traditional English program. The other, Erin, is part of our dual language immersion, and they are both going to be doing the pledge in their respective study language. I have given you a copy of both so that you can, obviously, the English one is a little more accessible to us, but the Spanish one, we may need to follow along a little bit. And so I would like to introduce you, Peyton and Erin. All right, Peyton, take it away. What do we do? Oh. Everybody. Stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And while we're standing, Erin, you ready?
Prometo lealtad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos.
All right, you ready? You're good? Oh, do you want to take a picture? All right.
Here and take a picture with the board of Ed.
All right, come on up to the front.
Okay, so look at this one, because this is
Yeah,
what I'm
right
gonna print. 1, 2, 3. Let's take one more. One.
No, they're right
Me,
here.
right here.
It's right in the middle.
Not bad.
1, 2, 3. And let's take one more. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Stay there. Now look at.
Okay, principal. Official for photographer of the board meeting today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You guys understand.
Great job. Oh, item 16. Organizational meetings. Okay, we have a discussion regarding the duties of the officers, and this is the time traditionally of the year where we rotate positions. We have president, vice president, clerk, and secretary. So
And rather than electing, traditionally Burlingame has rotated, as President Kendall is stating. So literally everybody moves one position with the exception of the secretary, which is the superintendent. And so that gives you 16.2, the election of the officers, assuming the normal rotation.
So 16.2, the election of the officers. Would anyone like to make a motion to elect a new? Because we can do it all at once.
Do we have to say names and everything?
I believe you have to say a name and a position.
Okay. I move to elect Lawrence Wong, trustee Wong as president, myself as vice president, trustee Serpongo as clerk.
I'll second that motion. All in favor?
Secretary.
Oh, yeah, secretary.
And superintendent.
We appoint-
Nominee
It's
and
on-
survey.
it's
It's a,
automatic.
it's a,
Okay.
he's appointed.
Okay.
All in favor?
I,
I would with one caveat, which is if trustee Mud would like to be the clerk instead, since we drew straws in the first place. I'm happy to.
Very kind of, I will just follow along.
President Kendall, I'm sorry, I didn't hear who the second was.
oh, was President Campbell.
Thank you.
Very quickly.
Great. Well, congratulations to the new board. And so if everybody would like to rotate their seats. As of now, we start with our new board. You got David Gray sitting next to
Your water.
Oh. I never actually sat in this seat before, so I was immediately.
Okay, mine was open.
We'll move now to item 17, recognition of outgoing board president.
So as is traditional in Burlingame, for a thanks for your service, and I know it was not always an easy year to your first time being president. We always donate to all of our schools, libraries in the name of the outgoing board president. And there is an attachment of all of the different books being donated. President can go in your name to each of the libraries, and they specifically focus on women in STEM and women in education, things that seem to have been salient points of your life that we decided were going to be highlighted in our purchasing and in your name and donating to all of the different libraries in the district. So thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to say, like, remember a year ago, everyone was still at home, right? The kids were at home, we were at home. You guys were sworn in online. So what a year this has been, and I've been so proud to be serving with you all on this board during such an incredibly challenging year. And our district staff has been amazing, and we, as we've been all saying, that we have an incredible community, and I'm so proud to have served with all of you on this board. It's challenging as it has. So thank you so much. This is very sweet.
I really want to say, Elizabeth, you had probably the toughest year I've ever seen of anyone for a president year, and you were always very calm and cool in meetings. And you make sure the temperature stays, where it should be to have, proper discussion and really be able to move forward on our meetings all throughout this really hard year. So, thank you so much for such great.
and I'll answer your phone.
Until we go home.
Thank you.
Sanko, I think you've been a fantastic board president, and I'm sure trustee Wong will follow in the footsteps, but it's to do a fantastic job.
Had a great example for
Thank you so much, you guys. Thank you. We are in very good hands with trustee.
This is my second go at it, so. Time's a charm. Okay, item 18. Organizational meeting, part 2, 18.1, board committee assignments for 2022. So I have a request that if the committee doesn't exist anymore, can we just like strike it from this list?
Yes.
I think that for the most part, most of us can stay in the committees that we've been in with just a few adjustments. So I know, Elizabeth, there's time constraints for you now. Is there the committee you were on last year that you can no longer be on?
I think the city district liaison, but you probably would go on to that.
Right, some of them, the president does.
Automatically do that.
And I think though, the past president usually continues on, so there's that, continuity, but I know that
It's challenging to find meetings between the city and my schedule.
right. And in the past, I know when Kay was the president, she also, her work wouldn't allow her to go to those. So it, you know, if someone else could be part of those meetings, I think that's fine. Let's see. City district liaison meeting. So Lisa, were you going to those?
Yep. And we have to understand.
Does anybody have any objection to that? Okay, so it'll be myself and Lisa. District. So BCE, Tate, will stay there. The alternate, Lisa. The bond oversight committee, Deepak, you're okay with it? That is a nighttime one. Elizabeth, you want to be the alternate on that one? Sure. Oh, we didn't have an alternate last year. Oh, yeah. Okay, the board liaison meeting. I know that you also were, even though that time might work for you, like prefer maybe being an alternate for that one? Or are you okay to stay on?
Yeah, I'm okay. I was wondering if anyone wants to switch off the owners, because that goes at night. Right?
Yes, I'm fine to switch off owners.
Okay, so how about that could be my primary one?
Okay, so on owners committee, it'll be Lisa and Elizabeth, right?
Okay.
And then the BSC board liaison, I'll do it and you're the alternate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jack, we have Lisa and I'm happy to stay the alternate. Black, Kate, and anybody want to be the alternate on BLAC? Or okay. Okay.
There hasn't been DLAC this year. We haven't done DLAC. Right now, it's kind of on pause.
Okay. But when they do happen, they're actually very nice.
They are, yeah.
The H.J. Burns Award is always the president, vice president, so that's a long read. JEDI, we always rotate. Owners is Kendall, PTA council is Reed. Does anyone else want to be the alternate for PTA council? I'll stay alternate. Okay. San Mateo County School Board Association. Deepak was the representative. You're okay to stay?
Yeah.
And then district rep for county committee on school districts. Yeah, I think it just rotates to whoever's president. So it's me, and then I think you're the alternate. Yep. Got that all, Kristen?
So does this go into effect this week?
That does go in effect as soon
In
as-
January.
In January.
These run
Right,
January
okay.
to December, so
Okay.
you'll finish up your
Okay,
current terms.
You have meetings still?
I have a meeting on Thursday.
Oh,
Thursday.
good for you.
I'm
Right
actually,
up till-
I love
right
that
up till the
committee,
last
so I'm happy to go.
Which committee?
It's the BSC liaison.
Oh, okay. Okay. So good.
Do we need to approve this?
It's
We don't have to.
Well, it's just those action item.
I believe it has to, do we have to approve it?
I
Since some
do
of these are official committees? Like CBOC?
I don't believe that it has to be approved. I think they can just state that those are the committees they're on, but if you'd like to approve it, that's fine.
the story we have.
Great.
All right, now we'll move to item 19, the consent agenda. Everybody's had a chance to go through it. Is there anything on the consent agenda that anyone wants to pull?
I had one, I actually had a question on one of the. 19.2. Add-on contract for our school. I wanted to clarify that when I looked at the contract, that it's a second year and beyond ongoing costs is like $16,000. It references that there's also an annual escalator each year that isn't specified in the contract. Do you have any information on what that is?
Bill and Allison left. This is an add-on contract for HR. So currently we're using Power School as our student record, as well as BIS uses it as a communication tool. It does have an HR module that Ms. Bell has been looking for to better communicate and organize for HR. And so it's the addition to the base cost is that amount. I think it's the 16,000. The entire contract does have an escalator. Given any increased cost, it hasn't escalated on us, but that is part of their contract.
All right, is there a motion for item 19?
Make a motion to approve item 19.
I'll second. All those in favor? Aye. Let's see. So I think we are to item 20, education, 20.1, mental health. JEDI.
Thank you. Good evening, trustees, President Juan. Nice to say that. Okay. Tonight we have Wendy Alexander and Jennifer Ibos, who will also be presenting along with us. So if you would mind coming on up, please. Dr. Spencer's unable to be here today, so I'm going to try and fill in for her. But Ms. Ibos and Ms. Alexander, if there's anything I'm missing, please feel free to chime in. So this evening we will be presenting on our mental health collaborative, our team, and kind of a little bit of our history, and we'll go through where we are now and where we're going to be going with.
So the mental health collaborative consists of the school psychologists, the counselors, the behaviorists, and the psych interns. We meet one time a month where we share resources and we provide support for one another. We talk about common pieces. And it's a great time where we all get to actually all be in the same room together.
So for those of you that have been on the board, I think it would probably just be Trustee Kendall and President Wong. About 4 years ago, we started a triangle that's a 3x3 triangle. So the three components going horizontal are general ed or classroom instruction, which is about 85% of our students. Then targeted instruction, which wavers between 7 and 10, depending upon what we're looking at. And then tier 3A, which is intensive targeted intervention, which is for students that are completely in general education. Tier 3B is intensive targeted, and they also receive some sort of specialized academic instruction, or they do have an IEP. Going up and down, there are universal screeners, progress monitoring, and benchmark assessments. So none of these are a stagnant group that you can move. We also have our pyramid goes 3 ways the other way. We believe it represents academic, behavioral, and social emotional. So in Burlingame, our intervention and instruction pyramid, again, is a 3x3. So 3 going up and 3 going left to right. So academic, behavioral, and social emotional.
So the mental health tiered approach that we're using, just like Ms. Silversmith just said, the mental health, the first tier is mental health strategies, like just classroom interventions, the second step in the Kimochis. The second step would be group support and short-term individual support. It'd be like school-based counseling in like small groups. Some of the groups are like friendship groups or social skills groups. There's an LGBTQ club at BIS. And then the third tier is the ongoing individual support, which is more for students that maybe have individual education plans where there's ongoing therapy and behavioral interventions.
And Ms. Alexander, just to go back to exactly what you're saying, all the components, all the programs to the right are available to all of our students.
Yes, yes.
So that's not tiered up, although it might look like it, those are actually available all within tier 1.
So during the pandemic, our mental health collaborative team continued to meet, discuss new ways to support staff, students, and parents. Together, we focused on a flexible service delivery model, and here are some of those implementations. So as you can see, we continue to provide remote wellness Wednesday sessions. We expanded our SEL toolbox for our teachers. We continued seeing students and parents virtually. We onboarded Care Solace through the MHSSA grant. And we expanded tier 1 through Mochi, second step, and zones of regulation.
So during the pandemic and coming back from being at home, we have seen an increased need for SEL and behavior support. So we have been lucky in working with, as a school district, we have been able to supplement some of our staffing. We increased to another full-time counseling position using COVID funds. We also added a position for a counseling intern. We have 2 school psychologist interns, so this will add a counseling intern because they also have to get hours, which is great. Our mental health staff has also remained super flexible, whether it's Zoom or FaceTime or phone calls, and available to make sure that we are meeting each staff and family and students where they need to be met. So very thankful for that.
And in putting together this presentation, we were asked as counselors just to kind of give an overview and summary of what our week kind of typically looks like, basically right now. And this was an average of the counselors in our district and the various services that they are providing and responsible for. You can just review those numbers and see, once again, that this is an average per week with the in total of all the counselors together.
Are there any questions for us?
I have a question about, so for recruitment for mental health staff, have we found that we do pretty well in terms of recruitment? Are we taking advantage of the interns who intern here and enjoy their time on that?
I can tell you that our last 2 psychologists we hired have both been interns, including actually our director of special ed was an intern for us. I have exciting news. Ms. Bell's not in here to get kudos, but there was an interview this morning for another counselor, and we had a successful candidate who signed and will be starting with us probably after the break. So the internship was a great idea to go out and look. I have to say our counselors have been a great recruitment for us. They have a very tight group of counselors in the area. So they've emailed out when we needed support. So I feel like that's expanding. I don't know if there's anything you guys want to add to that.
I'm so excited that the candidate this morning accepted the position. I think that she is going to be a great addition to our district. I know it has been difficult in finding additional counselors. I just think it's the time that all districts are going through and finding positions is really difficult. I'm really hoping that that can change as we start to move into maybe more of a concrete expectation of the role of a counselor, and hopefully with new recruits come this spring, we can also have more options out there for us. But I appreciate the district for always supporting the need for more counselors.
So with the new hire, is the team full?
No, with the new hire, we still have one open FTE counselor, and we also have one intern that we can still, we have posted.
The work you guys are doing is incredible. Hopefully you guys have someone to take care of you as well, because I would imagine coming out of COVID, it's been really tough. The only question I have is, can you kind of walk me through, once we get to the end of the school year, what the process is as far as, obviously you guys need a break going into summer. Is there a group that you reach out to kind of take on some of the students that maybe need continuing help into the summer, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think now having Care Solace as one of our resources has been a wonderful tool for a lot of us. I think we not only needed it when we were a little stretched thin, but also I feel that some students need more than just counseling services at school. And I've had a lot of success with the referrals I've made. So whenever parents do reach out to me, that is a resource I love using, and because I know that I can rely on them. But for students, at least for me, when I go off to summer and I have students who I won't see until August, let's say, I feel that I connect with parents and I let them know, things that I feel their student might need, like connecting with an outside counselor, and or possibly any programs that could be a good benefit for them, or any resources that I could direct them to.
I was just gonna say, it's also school-based counseling, so it's not like a long-term therapeutic support system. So Care Solace has been a really, really good support for us as counselors. The students that I see are generally, they have IEPs, so a lot of times so some of the kids will attend summer school, and then during that time I'm still here, so I'll still see kids that are on my IEP caseload. So it just really depends. And during the summer, I do often reach out to a lot of the families just to see how things are going.
And just to tag on to that, Trustee Reed, so counselors' school year is actually longer than a teacher's year, so they do provide support prior and after school's out. We also, this will be our third summer actually of offering mental health support during summer learning. Oh, wow. So we hire someone specifically to support mental health areas.
Thank you guys so much.
I do. First, I'm Lisa Mudd. I haven't had a chance to meet either of you, so nice to meet you. And thank you for that thorough presentation. I had a question around communication. So we know that our kids are needing a lot of mental health services right now. We're seeing some of the suffering they're going through and how they're integrating. When we see students that are struggling and something is reported by a parent or a student to you guys, what is the process or the protocol for communication to parents? And then also, so say a student reported to you that there's self-harm or he or she would harm somebody else, and that you get that notice. How quickly is a parent notified, and do we have a protocol in place for that?
Well, somebody threatened to hurt someone else or
themselves.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a reportable type incident. The other self-harm, it would just really depend. And I do feel like if there are issues at school that we're seeing, we definitely reach out to parents, and administrators would also be a part of that, depending upon what it was. Each case varies. I would think they're all individually.
So we don't necessarily have a system where
we have a written protocol.
Oh, we
Yeah, we do.
Okay. Oh, so can I learn a little bit about the protocol?
Yeah, so definitely for any comments or information brought to us regarding suicidal thoughts or comments, we meet with that student individually. The student who apparently is making those comments, we meet with them individually and we go through a checklist, actually provided by the county that we've collaborated with. And we identify them as either low risk, medium risk, or high risk. And depending on where they fit, we then follow the protocol. So if they're a low risk, it's usually just providing them support at school, connecting with families, maybe just like a check-in daily. I actually have a student right now who's a low risk. Medium could be contacting parents and then in addition, asking them to follow through with a doctor visit or a hospital visit. And then high risk could or would definitely be contacting a resource officer or a emergency responder who specifically deals with 5150, which is a report of suicide. And then from there, connecting parents, because a lot of times what we've discussed as a team is we want the student to get the immediate help, which means in our office, they are saying that they are suicide all the time, they have a plan, and they are going to attempt. We want that help to be given immediately, which sometimes if we were to contact parents first, there could be that discussion of is this the right thing. So therefore, we decided as a team to immediately police phone call and or emergency responder, and then from there, there's a process of if the student were to be hospitalized, there's the entry back into school. There's possibly maybe a 504 plan that's put in place. If there's a special ed student, who would be an addendum to the IEP. So like Wendy started, as Alexander said, it varies by student and by case, but definitely if it were suicide or thoughts, then there's a specific plan that we've been provided to by the county.
So parents are like, I need it.
Put that in. Give you more insight.
Yeah.
I look on the county book, it's really
Very thorough.
I believe it was on our mental health.
It should be on our knowledge.
Yeah.
It's very interesting if you're really, interested in.
It just really varies. Happens fast. And it depends on what's going on. Is it safe to live by a parent or, it's just so varied.
And we have a lot of things that come off the structure of it, that is this, then this, and
So the flow chart we actually were not following because when we were all distant on our minds, that was a huge issue because we couldn't meet with the student in person. And now we have to call homes and response may not be that's the best situation, and so therefore it was that. But I actually that because it's just not good to spend time to that way, that in any way, like working on
Thank you so much. I just had a general question about like since COVID, what trends you're seeing in the age versus some of the changes, there might be a little bit more for students to kind of remember how it is in class, students still. I think the transition, I think it's better now. It was really challenging to just kind of remember the classroom or those sorts of things.
And also like a lot about, growing up in isolation, right? Like not having to share more of that interaction, whether it be a recess or.
I think that's where some maybe people were focused on their anger and challenging for kids to access
It's hard to move. It's all the things I think that we as a team and I know that and the districts are very, very. So much for We're going to move on to item 21, finance, 21, proposed change orders, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Thank you for your time. President Wong.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna talk about one change order. We have 3 incoming boards tonight. Change order for 1, change order for 2, or pretty standard. Change order 3 is the change in the drawings. We got our initial bids without having TSA's approved drawings. TSA added a large part support. So there's $281,000 off this change order, which is some state sanction. There are a number of items on, including we only added 49,968 from escrows, and most of them we're seeing some of the steel items on. So I'm here tonight to just to let the board know that this was a change order we said was coming, but once we got the DSA going, we have the calibration guarantee back to the price. And the good news is it's only the 387, could have been much higher. So you see if you're looking at our contractor. We are recommending one change, that is replacing the blazer. They were already underperforming, and not responding to requests, and we just don't have that kind of schedule in time. So it's an $11,000 add change to our number 2 bid on the laser. Staff feels pretty strong that makes us better time in the long run. So tonight, we're asking for approval to change orders 1, 2, and 3. Bringing the total contract to $1,956,900, which is adding 22.6% of the total contingency.
What's the blazer?
The window back.
Oh,
Last.
Can I just ask very quickly, is this factored into what we looked at during the study session?
Yes, this is already in the budget.
Okay.
We're using the contingency that's in the budget of $1 million. So we're using that contingency of the project. We are, in fact, still well within our contingency. We could be surprised, things could come up. You know, we did have some water damage in some of the areas of the trenching that we had in place, but overall, the site went very well.
any questions for Tim? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve 21.1 proposed change order 1, 2, and 3 for the BIS Student Recreation Center and the park project.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So,
All right, wait. Now we're moving on to 21.2. New playgrounds, Omnia contract, Lincoln Elementary School, and schematic design.
sure. So we talked to 70 students and 9 staff, and we received input from them on what the play structure could look like, what the striping should be. So tonight, we're presenting to the board 2 things. One is a Omnia contract, which is the same contract we used for the play structures that we did this summer, including the surfacing, to realize the design that we have in place for this play structure. At the same time, there is a schematic design for layout, because the layout allowed us to determine where and the size of this play structure would be. We also got very detailed input from staff on what striping should be. And one of the big changes, we're adding a basketball court on the site that currently does not have a basketball court, but we're adding it in such a way that we can still have the hammerhead turnaround for fire trucks. So the 20-foot drive lane that is required for the fire trucks are still in place. The board has seen those drawings, they're attached to the board agenda item. So tonight, staff is asking for approval of both the Omnia contract, the amount of $278,199.68, and the conceptual designs of construction drawings for installation this summer.
Questions for Tim? Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve 21.2 new playgrounds on the contract Lincoln Elementary School and schematic design.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah. 21.3 workforce housing feasibility report, consultant phase 1 fee proposal.
So at the board's direction, we have sought multiple consultants, reached out to people who do just this, with the feasibility studies for workforce housing. We are happy to say that we are selecting and recommending DGC strategies of Dublin, California. They came to us with you know what, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's do an initial study of 25,000 that'll allow us to see if it's the feasibility, site visits, some market study, and collect some data to see if it's even something that they would move forward to a second phase. Tonight, the board did approve a budget moving forward on the project, so we're asking for approval. We would come to you once we have an initial study to talk about what next steps would be, if any. We may get some initial, you know, it's not possible, or here's how it is possible, and we would need to do the following steps to make that happen. DGC is the largest provider of this service to schools and religious associations in California. We were very impressed with their interviews. Amanda was on the interview panel as well. It was something that we would like to work with.
I even remember the name, TCT.
TTC, sorry. Wow, that was it's the hat.
Sorry,
Tight,
Tim.
so I'm-
Sorry, Tim.
Any
Where's that
questions
bus?
about
Where's that bus?
I have just a couple questions. How involved is the city of Burlingame with these studies? Is it all done kind of on its own, or do they work with the city and?
Correct. Yes, they will work with multiple governmental agencies, including the city, on looking on zoning requirements and all of that information. And that part of that is at the initial outlet, but there may be more detail in a second.
And do we know, have we talked to city council and what's just the general response been so far to exploring this project, or?
I have not talked with anyone because it wasn't a project for me until tonight.
Got it.
So I've spoken to the city in our mutual meetings. Actually, I believe trustee Mike, you were there as well as trustee Kendall. And the city manager and the two council members that were there were very positive and receptive to the idea. I think it would also, if we end up being able to go forward or wanting to go forward, it would also count in their housing inventory. And so that's very exciting to them instead of trying to meet those targets with all their other plans. That would certainly help. They were very positive, very receptive, and we told them that as soon as we had the study done and it was presented to the board, we would share a copy.
There was a lot of talk of workforce housing at the school board conference. There's a lot of districts that are looking at this, so. I think this is good.
One's very close to.
Very close.
Are they moving forward with?
Do we know, are other districts using this company?
Yes,
to
they're
do their
working with the
studies?
San Mateo High School.
Perfect.
Questions for Tim?
So this 25K comes out of the 140K.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, part of the budget that was established tonight. Yeah.
No more questions? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve 21.3 workforce housing feasibility report consultant phase 1 fee proposal.
Second. All those in favor?
All right.
Tim? Move on to 21.4 opioid mass action multi-district litigation.
Thank you, President Wong. So before the trustees tonight is just a conversation of whether the district would like to sign on in the opioid mass action. It's not just districts, it's municipalities throughout the state of California and actually nationwide. If the district wants to be a party to those lawsuits, it'll be consolidated throughout the state. And I need the board to take action to direct me to sign up with one of those mass action litigation lawsuits. So that's the topic of the discussion. There is currently a $26 billion proposed settlement that would go to districts and municipalities. What would our slice of that be if we sign up? To be determined. Of course, it would be split throughout all of California. There are impacts to the opioid crisis in every community, which makes us eligible for the lawsuit.
Do you have a question about it?
I'm just wondering, do you have a recommendation? I think we should move forward.
It is recommended, even if it's not much that comes out of it. But for example, we just heard from our health and wellness folks this evening, specifically about mental health. But we provide a pretty robust social, emotional, as well as mental health program here. And even if it's a small amount of money that's one time, if it can go towards continuing to support what is frankly a fairly large staff for our size district, so that we can continue those services, anything else.
The same question I have is why wouldn't we sell
There's no adverse impact to not signing up for it, but if we don't sign up for it, then certainly we wouldn't get any of the funds that are due.
And it's not a far stretch to think that our families and even some staff have been affected by the crisis. Okay, so is any more questions? Is there a motion?
Opioid mass action.
All those in favor? Aye. Good. Item 22, human resources, 22.1, CVEST waiver for classroom teacher Dolores Canizales.
Good evening. So I bring forth to you a couple of waivers for some classroom teachers, 3 teachers in particular, and I'll go through each of them individually. The first one is for a CBES waiver for classroom teacher Dolores Gonzalez. You might remember her as a permanent substitute teacher. She is currently pursuing her credential through USF, and USF misguided her and letting her believe that she had met all the basic skills requirements. Upon review of her application, the county determined that they had an error and they counted a class that was not worthy of the basic skills requirements. So she will be needing to take the CBES test. So we are asking for a waiver on her behalf so that she has the remainder of this year to continue teaching in the classroom.
Any questions about this?
I'll make a motion to approve 22.1 CBES waiver for classroom teacher Dolores Gonzalez.
Second.
5 seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
22.2 CBES waiver for classroom teacher Kelsey Party.
So this is Kelsey Partey. She is new to the district this year. Last year, she held a CBES waiver, and this year she's asking for an extension on that waiver. So she can only have 2 extensions of this particular waiver. So she will have the remainder of this year to study for her CBES test and to pass it, or to take classes to meet that basic skills requirement. So we are asking that she be approved for a CBES waiver for the remainder of this year.
Motion?
To approve 22.2 CBES waiver.
Second. All those in favor? 22.3 CBES waivers for classroom teacher Lou Jin.
So Lu Jin is a long-term substitute teacher at BIS for the Mandarin program. She is 1 test away from completing the CBES requirements. So we are asking for a CBES waiver for her to continue working towards completing that.
Any questions? Is there a motion? Oh, yeah. That's fine. Yeah. Okay. Is there a second for this one?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
22.4 single subject credential waiver for classroom teacher Lou Jin.
This is my last waiver, and this is for a single subject credential for Mandarin. She has met all of the requirements for CBES for this waiver. However, she is 1 class away from completing the credential program, so we're asking for a waiver for her to continue.
Questions?
I'll make a motion to approve 22.4 single subject credential waiver for classroom teacher Legion.
2 seconds? Oh, so you said- okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right,
One statement or not a general.
all right, item 23, public statements related to non-agenda topics.
Hi there.
Hello, good evening.
My name is Ethan Lester. I have 2 kids in your system. Franklin is unbelievable. It's beautiful. Reason I'm here, this is the 2nd occurrence. Different boy, my 13-year-old daughter. First boy slapped her, knocked her down. And if any of you guys have kids, you totally understand why I'm here. This is the 2nd occurrence at BIS, different boy, slapped 3 girls. And I looked at the website and it says right on there, safety. And I'm going, and I heard the mental health gals. And I'm thinking, okay, they kept talking about suicide. Biggest thing with kids today is boundaries, right? And it's the parents' responsibility to teach kids boundaries, right? I just want you guys to know what's happening in these schools. It kind of appalled me when I met with the vice principal. I can't remember his name. Black gentleman, very nice doctor. Told him I was coming to this meeting and I was going to say something. Totally appalled. Oh, don't go to the meeting. Don't go to the meeting. Excuse me, you guys as a district need to know what's going on. I have a coworker that had his daughter in before COVID. Same situation. Bullied at BIS and slapped and knocked down. And I have all their names. I'd rather not put their names out there because my daughter is like totally scared to go to school and to interact with these people because it kind of seems like what she's telling me, and I take it with a grain of salt, they're kids. The boys are kind of like a mob. And what they're doing is they're gathering and they're playing like the finger slap up against all their friends' faces after the fact, right? So, and I'm not scared for her at school, which should be a safe haven for the kids. It's after school on Burlingame Avenue in Burlingame, because these boys are all kind of taken together and going down in the city. So that's all I want to say. If you guys have kids, you totally see what I'm talking about. And if it happened once, I understand. I'll be a father and just step away from, you know, what's happening, because I understand the ramifications of COVID and all that. But twice, there's definitely a problem going on with the mental health of these boys and their situations. And I think that needs to be addressed with the mental health people as well. And I'm glad I'm here to hear the mental health side, because suspending a kid on a Friday is giving them a 3-day weekend, right? This happened last Thursday to all 3 girls. But if there's a mental health, you know, someone that actually talks to him or talks to the parents, because they won't even let us, you know, the days when I was a kid, you got into an altercation. You never got really into an altercation with a girl, mostly boys, right? Parents would talk to each other. It would be solved. They won't even let us meet now. And I don't know where that comes in, but at least we can talk and get it out. The first instance, they brought in a mediation for the kids. The boy laughed it off and the counselor laughed it off during the process. So the kid was like, oh, everything's cool. Go right back to school, he can do it again. That's how I felt during this process. So it's very tough having a kid in a school and she's supposed to feel safe if it's not.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Lester.
I appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
And we can't, you know, it's not agendized, we can't really talk about this, but I would
Yeah.
direct staff to.
Well, as long as you guys know, that's why I'm here, informational. So I appreciate your time. You guys have a great night.
Thanks for staying for the whole thing. All right, any more public comments?
That's it.
Okay, so item 24, board requested items. Are there any board requested items? Lisa?
I was wondering if we could have a discussion at some point about our past scores and deciding how we're doing and how the pandemic impacted us, and it might be maybe Marla's gonna say this is on the next agenda.
That's in the year, it happens
Every year. Yeah.
every year.
We'll be reviewing academic data. Do you know which meeting it's scheduled for?
So the state has actually not, they've only released individual data. We do not have any segregated data or any of our demographic, or aggregate or any of our demographics or anything yet. So we're actually waiting for that for a lot of things. As soon as we get that, we would be happy to bring it. It'll probably be January, February.
And it doesn't have to be on here because we do it. every year.
Yeah, it's an ongoing.
That will be a fascinating report.
You probably noted that you've got individual reports at home, so we're waiting for all the aggregate data.
Anybody else? Okay, so we'll keep on the couple things that we have here. And that goes unchanged. All right, item 25. Adjournment, is there a motion? I make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I'll
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, trustees.
Oh.